Omaha native and lifelong Nebraskan Mitch Sherman knows Husker football very well. Always interesting to hear Mitch's take on the game. Clayton caught up with him earlier today.
Thank you very much, Mason. Mitch, first of all, thank you so much for joining us. I have to say, though, you have me looking weak out here. You're dressed like ready for a week 3 game. I'm here bundled up in the Al Roker Thanksgiving collection over here.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is pretty much my normal game day attire once we get to October and November. I'm not doing this. I'm not participating necessarily in the blackout here. I'm pretty black and white with the dress normally, but happy to fit in at Memorial Stadium tonight.
Yeah, well, this was already going to be a massive game in terms of the blackout top 25 opponent, but also some extra excitement in the air with the re-signing, the extension of Matt Rule. Just how important was that to get that done going into the final month of the season without the coaching carousel hanging over the program?
Yeah, this is a wild coaching carousel that we're already seeing develop and change and build every week in college football. And for Nebraska to even have a couple of toes in that carousel in the month of November, it creates a distraction. I think we saw it at times create a distraction in the month of October after the Penn State opening happened on October 12th. So for Nebraska to be able to say, okay, we're out, we've got our coach locked up, this is not going to be a factor, an issue, any kind of a distraction down the stretch in these final 4 games and through the postseason, through recruiting, through the transfer portal period. It's a significant check in Nebraska's column to be able to build for what remains this season and into 2026.
Distractions out of the way, excitement all the way for the blackout game. When you look at this one, I mean, obviously we'll start with the obvious. You have the number 1 passing offense in the country taking on the number 2 passing defense. Something's got to give kind of matchup. What do you see as key in that group?
Yeah, I think Nebraska needs to find a way to get pressure on Jaden Mayava. And he's been strong against the blitz this year. He hasn't been sacked much. Nebraska has not done much sacking of the quarterback itself relative to other teams in the Big Ten and nationally. So John Butler and his defense and that defensive front 6 or front 7, they've got to find a way to be creative tonight. And if they're not sacking Mayava, there's something to get some hits on him. They need to get pressure on him, as Butler and Matt Rule like to say, affect the quarterback, because this is the kind of quarterback, unlike maybe a couple that Nebraska's faced, particularly in these last couple of weeks, even the Minnesota quarterback that was part of a big victory over Nebraska, they didn't have the kind of ability and the kind of weapons at their disposal in the passing game that Mayava has tonight for USC. So Nebraska has to be on point in its pass defense. I don't believe, even with the number 2 rated pass defense in terms of yardage allowed per game that Nebraska has, that it can be status quo tonight and they can do the same things and get away with what they have in the first 8 games of the season.
Now, throughout the week, we've talked about special teams. We've talked about the run game for USC will still be formidable despite not having their lead back. Is there a certain factor that stands out to you that really could decide this game tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I think the crowd, and when you look around what this place is going to be like at 6:30 tonight, the ability to the crowd can do quite a bit also in impacting that USC offense. You know, force them into a silent count. And Nebraska, of course, plays a part in getting that crowd revved up. And if that's happening and there's momentum that's going on the Nebraska side and the crowd is behind this defense, then yes, USC just played a game at Notre Dame a couple of weeks ago, but that didn't go all that well for USC. So try to recreate some of the problems that USC faced in that game that any quarterback and any offense would face coming into this kind of an environment. I expect it to be completely full of energy and just a ton of juice inside Memorial Stadium tonight. So I look at that, and then of course, you know, things like special teams and turnovers that are always intangibles in games that you expect to be close going into the fourth quarter.
Now, November has been a struggle for the Huskers in recent years. We've talked so much about the progression for this program. How big of a step would it be for them to, you know, not to put too much pressure on one game in a top 25 matchup, which they've struggled with, but just how much of a statement game can this be on a number of fronts for the Huskers to potentially get it done tonight? Yeah,
I think NBC, national TV, there's a ton of eyes on Nebraska tonight. A lot of eyes, of course, on USC, but that national ranking alongside USC's name, we know the numbers. We know it's been 28 consecutive games that Nebraska has failed to win against ranked opponents. So it would be nice to just not be able to have that conversation anymore if you're Nebraska. I think the November record, you know, Matt Rule's record against ranked opponents, you know, it all factors into like how big this thing can be for Nebraska. If it finds a way to pull this off, then it puts aside a lot of that history and a lot of those things that, while they're not necessarily dragging down the program, it's a cloud over the program a little bit. It's something that people nationally who only check in on Nebraska in games like this can point to and say, well, it's the same Nebraska that has struggled for the past 2 decades. Well, while you can't cure all of that in one game, that's something that's going to take weeks, months, maybe years to do. Tonight can be a big step toward bringing Nebraska back to a place where it's getting, I would say, more respect, more notice, and certainly with the recruits who are in town tonight to help with them too. And that's a tangible effect to be able to build toward the next year and the years ahead with Matt Rule in charge.
Yeah, big one there. Also, the Huskers hosting almost more than 50 recruits today on the sidelines. They'd sure love to see a win here. They'll certainly, at the very least, see an incredible atmosphere here for this primetime Blackout game. Mitch, thank you so much for joining us. Get up in the booth and enjoy the warmth up there as it gets real cold tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Big Ten Saturday night kicks off from Lincoln within the hour. Noah Eagle and Todd Blackledge have the call. First Alert 6 will have complete coverage after the game.